All right, here is your Mexico review guide. This is my fellow Camaria, part of my patron client system, Maya. She's ready to help. She just got done watching Coco. First question here. Before the year 2000, the president of Mexico was always decided by the president of the PRI, where they would select their successor. So they would kind of pick the president that they wanted to run, and then the PRI would win. Again, the PRI dominated from 1929 to 2000, so the 20th century. Interest groups and political parties in Mexico, they have ideologies. There's incentive there to join compared to political parties where they are just running for office. They're trying to get candidates to win office. Interest groups have a specific thing that they're running for. Pan presidents, Fox and Calderon, in the 2000s, maquiladoras, they produce goods made in Mexico for the United States and mostly towards the north and in the northern border. That is helping with their economy. Again, a lot of those goods are going to the United States. For PAN, what you need to know, they're a neo-corporatism. They're very pro-business, conservative, pro-Catholic Church. They've benefited from all the people moving up to the north. The more people that move up to the north, and they can get representation, which will help then in the representation, the Chamber of Deputies. Mexico citizens elect the president, the Chamber of Deputies, Senate, and then local and state government officials like governors. In northern Mexico versus southern Mexico. In northern Mexico, you have more business, you have better schools, and they're growing in population because of the migration from the south for jobs. In the south, they're more poor, uneducated. They're Amerindians. Okay, so the Zapatista movement is in the southern portion of the country. And a lot of those people are leaving because they're in high poverty areas. Again, like the Camarillas, that's the patron client system in PRI. Mexico is a rentier system. The revenues come from foreign companies, which are relying on the oil. Again, the PRI could care less about the people and their public policy because they relied on their oil. The Catholic Church has some role in Mexico. Again, they do have separation of church and state. Up until a few years ago, Catholic priests couldn't even vote. You cannot be a priest if you want to be the president. PRI would be a state corporatist type party. Mexico and Russia, what their political systems have in common, it is a federal system, so they have states, but they're weak states. They do have a bicameral legislation, and they have a population that represents a region.
I want to see.
We'll show you after. What causes countries like Mexico and other LDCs to adopt neoliberal economic forms? In the 1980s, oil prices dropped, so that means their economy dropped because they relied solely on their oil. Mexico government broke. There's too much debt, and they had pressure from international banks, so they received some of those loans, but then they allowed foreign companies to come in. Some of the chief corporatism or criticism of corporatism, it limits some of the representative process. It limits the people. Two largest ethnic groups are the Amerindians and the Mestizos. The IFE was created after the election fraud in 1988, responsible for running Mexican elections. They give voter ID cards. They have a registration system. They also control campaign finance. They have a large bureaucracy in Mexico. It's a major source of employment. A lot of those individuals live or reside around Mexico City. The Mexico Miracle, 1950s and 60s, a huge economic boom because of the oil, but when the oil price dropped, their economy faltered as well. How do the party systems in Mexico and Russia have in common? What do they have in common? Mexico does have three large parties, and PAN, PRD, and PRI. They're the most stable. Russia, which is United Russia, which is Putin's party, is the Communist Party, and the Liberal Democrats. United Russia and PRI are kind of similar, where they stay in power, and there's not much competition. Some of the parastatals, government, they're semi-owned. The biggest one you need to know is Pemex. NAFTA, that was that agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, which they dropped tariffs to increase trade and cooperation amongst their economies. Again, Pemex is that state-owned oil company. The main reason the economy struggles in the 1980s, we've talked about that. the economic recession, and as well as the fall in oil prices. Mexico Constitution of 1970, their source of legitimacy. They do have judicial review. Three branches of government. They do have a bicameral system that it created, the federal government, which means they have states, and the sexenio, which means that the president can only serve a 6-year term. There's no re-election right down here, number 27. Why was 2000 considered a turning point? Again, it was the end of the PRI domination. First time a non-PRI president was elected since 1929. Political legitimacy, constitution, political parties, they do have elections. Reforms and transitioned Mexico away from a dominant party. They created that IFE so they could look at election fraud. They had different type of electoral reforms, such as proportional voting, and they privatized a lot of the parastatals so that the parastatals then, the PRI could not rely on them. An empirical statement, what is it? It's a statement based on facts, numbers, and stats. What is a normative statement? Based on value judgments, kind of an opinion. How can a dominant party promote a legitimate government, hinder a legitimate government? The way they can promote it, things that keep running, maybe put in some necessary reforms. They always gain a majority vote. Again, you only have one side to work with. Things are going to be passed. However, it hinders it because there's no competition or choice. It could encourage corruption, and no one's checking their power, and then it could lead to an authoritarian figure. Last thing here, compare and contrast Chinese and Mexican judicial systems. Mexico Constitution does allow judicial review, but it's rarely used, so it's somewhat of a weak judicial branch. It was not independent for a long time. Chinese system is not independent of the party. It's controlled by the party and does not allow for judicial review.